Good morning, Camp David listeners. Welcome to our podcast today again. Pete, welcome. It's good to have you once more.
Yeah, thanks.
Today, I think we're going to continue our small series on when a boy becomes a man. So we spoke generally about that in the first podcast, and we spoke about responsibility, what that means, and how you take responsibility practically. Starting with the small things. And then we spoke about selflessness last week. And this week we're going to touch on brotherhood / community.
Yeah.
What does it mean? What does it not entail? And all those things around that. So obviously we are from Camp David, a men's ministry. And we focus on masculinity, being a man God's way, not being a man the world's way, which is vastly influenced by the enemy and lies. And let's maybe stop at that. Enemy and lies. So if we really want to be men of God, it's really important to distinguish between the way the world tells us to be men and the way God and His Word tells us to be men.
Yeah.
If we don't even know that difference, we're not going to get really far. We're just going to be, the same as the world. And I think if being separated and being holy means we should be different, then we definitely have to speak about this. What does it mean to be a man of God, and what does it mean not to be a man of the world? Which I think is a really good topic. What do you think, Pete?
No, I think it's an extremely good topic to talk about because it's very important, because regardless of whether you're living in a godly manner or whether you're living in a worldly manner, you will have brothers. You will have people that is close to you, and they will influence who you are and who you become. And it's quite evident if you look at it in the world. I mean, Napoleon Hill, who was a guy who wrote a book about self-help to some extent. The one of his most important things was masterminding, and it's the 5 people you surround yourself with. It's the person you become. You become the average of those 5 people. And so if we look at what brotherhood looks like in the world, that'll basically be it. I mean, it's one of those, show me your friends and I will show you where you're going. And even though I didn't want to believe my dad when he said that when I was at school, to some extent that became true. And it's one of those things. I mean, if I look at my life before I met Christ, about the people I surrounded myself with that was close, they differ now to the people that I'm close to now, in the way they think, the way they act, the things they do. And I think I think we as people want to think that we autonomous, we operate by ourselves, we make our own decisions, but it doesn't happen that way. The world that has influence, the people around us has an influence. I mean, we were created to be social beings. Even if you are an introvert, your circle is just decidedly smaller, but you have people around you. And that's where we get healing and where we get sustenance from. It's from people. So it's very important to make sure how that looks different for a godly man. And I think it's very important to then maybe show the difference between godly brotherhood and worldly brotherhood. If we want to use that term, make sure,
I'm thinking of, when you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so, for us men, we can be really task-driven. Sometimes we just get so busy. We have so many responsibilities, especially when you have a family.
Oh, yeah.
I just see this tension in my life and most men, probably all men, that has family. You have to provide for them financially, but you have to be there practically, spend time with them. Quality time, not necessarily quantity, but quality. And, that tension, oh man, it's so hard. they need money to do what they need to do and to evolve into who they need to become, you know. But I also have to be there to support them in that. It's so difficult. But when we are this busy and we forget to aim at something, to get a vision, you know, to set a vision or goals or whatever you want to reach, then you don't know where you're going. You know, I think it's in John 12 where Jesus says, if a man puts his hand to the plow, but he keeps on looking backward, he's not going to go on the straight path.
Yeah, he's not fit.
And those men are not fit for the kingdom. That's what he says. So we have to have something that we aim at. I've been on a tractor before on the farm, and if you don't look at something in the distance, you are going sideways, you know, to and fro all the time. But when you have a tree or a corner post or something where you aim at in the distance and you go straight, and that's why I think brotherhood is so important. We need goal setters or direction setters next to us or in front of us, something to follow or to balance against, just to make sure we keep on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
If we don't have that, if we don't have people that looks after our blind spots, who every now and then, you know, bumps against us or just tells us, hey man, I think you're better than that. I think you can do better. Or maybe you're overreaching, slow down a bit. Spend some time with your wife, you know. If you don't have those men in your life, you're in trouble. You're going to be all over the place.
Very, very true. I think there's two things that I really want to mention now. Is number one is when we talk about brotherhood at Battle to Fight with Camp David, we've got this illustration, and that's what you were alluding to now, is that if a man walks by himself, then it's very easy to, with small nudges, get him off target from where he needs to go. But if there's somebody next to him, then nudging him, they just bump into each other because the other guy is not being nudged. And that's, I mean, obviously that causes friction. And I'm pretty sure that's what you're hitting now. But because of that, the guy ends up where he needs to go. And that's very important because if you don't have that guy, people like that in your life, you're going to just be pushed around. You're going to be, you know, tossed around on the ocean. And you might end up somewhere, but it's definitely where you don't want to be.
I can't find that scripture, but it says, iron sharpens iron, and so a friend sharpens the countenance of his friends.
Yeah.
So, you know, that shoulder rubbing, that bumping against each other, that almost a confrontation, that conflict is shoulders rubbing shoulder, iron sharpening iron. And we need to be sharp in this world.
Oh, definitely.
If you're not sharp, you're going to struggle, especially if you're a man.
We've got enough battles as men in this world to just be walking around in it by yourself is being an idiot, to be really blunt with regards to that. But I mean, you've got enough battles to fight. If you want to do it alone, that's a wonderful way of going down. And that's the thing, is that if you don't have people close to you, and I think this is the other point that I wanted to make, is the difference between a friend and a brother. The scripture talks about a friend is for always, but a brother is for times of adversity. And that's exactly that. The brother is not necessarily the guy that's always nice and friendly with you. When needs be, he's the one that's coming to you and saying, hey, I'm seeing this in your life. And it's a concern to me. And you're going to have to be, well, if you're immature, you're not going to be teachable and you're going to blow it. And you're going to bump your head. But if you're teachable in that moment and you realize this guy is one of my brothers, he's one of the people I'm looking to some advice for. When he sees something, I need to open up my ears. I need to open up my eyes. I need to listen and do what he says and do something about it. Because he's seeing something and he's walking right next to me. And I mean, we talked about it in I think in that first video about walking together. And that's exactly that, is that if he's walking next to you, he's got a different angle at your life. but he's seeing it from a different angle than you are, but he's walking that same path with you. And to some extent, he doesn't want to go down with you, and he doesn't want to see you go down, because then his flank will be open in some extent. But also, that's not how we do life as godly men. I mean, we're building each other up, we're strengthening each other, and we're being there for each other when times are tough. But a big part of that is warning somebody about if he's heading to a cliff, opening up about it and telling them, hey, you're going to fall off. You need to do something. You need to please stop what you're doing right now. It might not be nice. You might not like what he's saying, but you need to listen.
So this is good. I just think the world, unfortunately, we've already been influenced by the world and the world's way. So all of us, to some extent, have been influenced.
Oh, yeah.
And are still walking in the world's way of being a man. Which is pretty sad, but it's true. Which just means we have to reset our direction. Our vision of who we need to be, where we're aiming towards. Just to, be more like God wants us to be. And I'm just thinking of, just the way we set up our lives. Okay, I've got my house, my family, my car. It's all my domain. And there's not really people doing life with me. To get that to change, it's really difficult. Because we were taught that it's all on me, it's all on the man. I'm the leader. I'm the king over this tomorrow. I have to do this and this and this. And letting someone into that, breaking my stride, my discipline, my routine, my momentum is really hard. It's good, but because I don't know the extent of that goodness that I can taste, it's hard to let someone in there, which is really dangerous. So we have to create a space or a method almost, or a strategy of what it means to do life together. Eat together. It's one of probably the most important things. And we like to braai, so let's braai together, Or go hunting together, but leave the wives at home. Okay. Just take the boys. Although I won't mind my girl learning to shoot something. I don't mind. If she wants to.
My girl definitely wants to go with.
Yeah.
She's a little hunter.
Yeah. So I think, resetting those small steps will make a big difference. But let's be practical. That's general what we're talking about. Let's speak about the difference between what the world says a man should be and what God and His Word says a man should be. Where do we start?
Well, I think the easiest part, without having to go too far into the memory banks, is to figure out what the world says community is. And to some extent, some of it is based on very good ideas, but the way they go about it is very skewed. And it's that thing of who's got your back. I mean, if you go as a group of friends to a bar and the bar fight starts, then who's the guy that's got your back, that will make sure that you at least get home after the fight? or we'll take you to hospital when you lose. And I think that's to some extent what the world is. I mean, it's the people that helps you get in trouble and helps you when you are in trouble and helps you get out of trouble. But I think the first step on that one is where the problem is that they shouldn't be the ones that get you into trouble. And I think that's probably where worldly brotherhood and godly brotherhood differs. In that with godly brotherhood, we're looking out for each other. We're seeing things happen, looking to things that are seeing certain patterns in your life. I mean, we've got a friend that's currently we are slightly concerned about, and the main reason is we are seeing certain patterns. He's isolating. He's not talking that often to us. And the reason why
blame shifting as well.
he's blame shifting as well. And because of that, we're seeing things that happened in our lives. I mean, when I was at a bad space, I was doing those certain same things. And that's why I don't want you to be there, because I know it's not a good place. And this is what I did. What you are doing is what I did when I was there. And I had to dig myself out of the hole I was digging. Or get myself out of the hole I was digging. And that's what you're doing now. So I want you to stop digging. Because there is another way. And I think that's where, when you're talking about building community, I think that's where it starts being difficult. Is that most people, it's a risk, especially if you look at, you've got a family. The system you have now is working to some extent, and most people are scared to fix what's not broken, because it is a risk. Because you're gonna have to expose your whole family to community, and that means that even however much I like you as a person, you and your wife do parenting different to what I and my wife do to some extent. There are quite a few similarities, but there are certain things that we do different. And I've got to be okay with exposing my children to that, to the way you guys do it, and to your children. And okay, we've made that step. We're okay with that. So just to make that clear. Yes. But still, it is a risk. And okay, we are starting to see the rewards from that. But it's still, I think it's something where we spoke about it a bit. I think when we were talking about responsibility, we spoke about starting to get certain small things into place when you're younger. And I think this is one of them. When your risk profile is in such a place where stepping out into community and risking whatever might be the risk for that as a young single man is a lot less than when you've got a family. And when you can start doing that as a young single man, it starts getting easier. So I think that's probably where we have to start. But the problem is that most of the people that need it, people that men that are in danger of, probably thinking about committing suicide or that, are usually not at that place. So
what I'm hearing is that the world, correct me if I'm hearing wrong, but that the world says, I'm not going to interfere, I'm not going to intrude into your life, into your family or whatever, into your situation, because I respect you. That's what the world. God says that because I love you, I will interfere. Although it's uncomfortable and I don't want to physically, okay? Because I love you, I can't keep my mouth shut. I have to show you that this is what I'm seeing from an outside perspective. Because I love you, I'm telling you this because I care for where you're going and your family. And because I care for you and your wife and your marriage and your kids, this is what I'm seeing. And sometimes we take a risk. It might be wrong, it might be right, but go evaluate. Ask your wife. Get that input. That's even a more difficult one sometimes. But then evaluate honestly and make sure that you're on the right path, in the right direction. I think that's one thing. The other thing is about the boys. Oh man, I think it's such a privilege to expose our kids to different kinds of parenting. Because otherwise it's so limited. None of us gets it right perfectly. We do some right things. We do fall short. But the more we have community and we trust one another, despite our mistakes and shortcomings, the more they see things. And if there's a good relationship, they can talk to me about it and we can discuss it. I can even learn from what they say. We learn from each other. It's a humble, teachable spirit, which is part of brotherhood. And the world doesn't see it that way, I don't care what you're doing, I'm right. The man is always right until his wife says he's not. Okay. That's what the world says. But that's not what the Word of God says and what the kingdom says. The kingdom says different. Nobody's right. God's the only one with the whole truth. And that's why we follow Him together with Jesus. And that makes sense in my head. But if I have to be honest, it's difficult. Because I've been influenced by the world. It's difficult to change the default setting. When the pawpaw hits the fan or the hardships come, I always, unfortunately, default to the way I've been taught, the way I've been living my life. So to change that, that's a difficult thing. That's where intentionality comes in. And when I decide something and I want to be intentional about it, I have to speak to my brother that keeps me accountable. I have to tell him, okay, this is what I'm aiming at. I've reset my direction. This is what you have to look out for. If you see me doing this, for instance, isolating or hardening my neck against my wife, tell me about it. That I can be conscious, even though it's hard to hear it, and make the intentional decision of doing it differently.
Yeah, I think that's a very good plan. And I think you're touching on an area that earlier this week we spoke to some of the guys that we are discipling in the group on Thursday. And one of the things that came out there that was so good is that you need to get a few people and you need to nominate them and you need to tell them, you're my inner circle. When I come to you with this, I want you, I need you to be honest with me, and maybe sometimes brutally so. And I think that's one thing, is that if you want to start living this way, get those people, talk to them and tell them, listen, this is, I want to come to you, or I want to give you the right to talk to me and tell me, I'm seeing this in your life. And I know that the people that I've done that with, I think I'm going to need to call them again and just make sure that they still understand this. Because some of them have been quiet. And I can't be doing everything right. But still, if you talk to those guys, and they come to you, then you know. I mean, it's not always, I mean, we're talking now if we're seeing bad things, but it's sometimes those guys come to you and they say, I've been seeing what you're doing. Keep on doing that. It's good. We are seeing the fruit of that. And that's the thing. I mean, we're so danger averse to some extent that we're just talking about the bad things. But it's not all bad. I mean, brotherhood is very good. I mean, it's some of the best times we've had, is people that we spend time with, because we start living together and we can share so much more. And I think the world hungers for that. Yeah. And if we start living it and we start doing it, not only are we going to bump our heads less, but we're going to experience more of life and have that abundant life, have it more fully. And I think it's really important to have that.
I think to move on, another thing that influences friendships or brotherhood really in a big way is trust. You can't have any relationships without the basic trust binding it together, you know. And in the world, I mean, everybody's always striving for trust, because trust makes you feel accepted, because you feel safe. So what men tend to do, and I did it when I was still in the world way back, you know, we mock each other in a slight way, and then we say, no, I'm just joking, you know. So we almost take each other out in a subtle way, but I'm just joking. And you know, we as men really get good at that. We laugh about it, and you know, even if I do it to you, you laugh about it. It's a small taste of a little bit of, you know, I'm getting attention, but it's actually a small knife.
Yeah.
You know, stab in the back. And after a while of that, you distrust others, because it does hurt in some way. And lots of doing that hurts more. It creates a big wound. It can create a big wound. and then trust is missing, then, I mean, if there's no trust between us, I won't trust you to say good things to me. So that it doesn't even help you giving input. I won't fall for it. I'm not trusting that you want the best for me. I'm not trusting that you really love me, or care about my family. The trust issue is a big thing. And there's a scripture from Proverbs that we found. Proverbs 26, verse 18 and 19. It says, like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I was only joking. And that's what we tend to do. The world's way is, I'm gonna hit you with some words, with some jokes that might hurt you, but I'm only joking.
Yeah.
I'm only doing it lightly, but it has an effect. And we've done it in Camp David, in our brotherhood, We've set a higher standard for the way we speak to one another. Yes, we still make jokes, but it's never personal. Because we value that trust that keeps us as brothers together, keeps us standing, keeps us moving together in a better way. And even we also have this saying that if two Navy SEALs are running, we've got a race, which in the world's way might seem like, man, I'm going to beat you. I'm better than you. I'm still finding myself. I'm going to show you I'm better than you. But in God's kingdom, we see it as we're going to push each other to be more, to find deeper revelations of God and deeper revelations of who He made us to be. If you're running, we're pushing one another, but not to beat one another, but to be better men of God, to find more of what His Word says about the truth. And it's just so different in the world.
So when you were talking about the race, there's two areas that I was thinking about. I mean, the first thing is obviously physical, but it's so I've started seeing it when we talk about spiritual things as well. When I realize something, when I read something, and I'm like, wow, what is this? I come to you and I share it with you. And when you have that same thing, you share it with me, and both of us grow in that area, and we can talk about it and we can discuss it. Because sometimes there's certain things where you think, oh my word, this is so amazing, and then when you get to it and you put it into context, you're like, oh no, it doesn't actually work that way. But it's a good point that you're talking about this. Let's discuss this. And because we talking to each other, we're not getting to a place where we pulling certain things totally out of context, because that's how cults start. We don't want that, but still, I mean, we're staying in that centerpiece, that way, right there where God is, not to the extremes, not to either super this way or super that way. It's right there where God is, because we're because we're talking to each other, so there's never a chance of one of us with running away with an idea, because there'll always be a safety, and it's not that we're holding each other back. If it's a good idea, we're running together, and it's got grounds to go forward. It's the same as when we do it physically as well. I mean, we're building each other. You are a better gymmer than I am, so it's fun when I go to gym with you, because I can learn certain things, and when I have to do certain exercises, make sure that I do it right. And it'll probably be the same if you come hunting with me with the bow and arrow. I'll be able to give you some pointers with regards to that. But still, it's something where we grow together and we can learn from each other, and that's something that's so important, because as you said, in the world, I'm respecting you. I don't want you to wash your dirty laundry in the public, and that's also when we get to trust, because that's not what happens with brotherhood. It's not I'm putting it out there for everyone. It's I'm talking to you about it, and I'm trusting you to take that information and treat it as the gold that I gave it, because it comes from deep inside. And if you break that trust, then it's okay. we'll probably still be friends, but that's where you are. You'll be a friend. You won't be a brother. And that's exactly what happens in the world. I mean, if I just take my own life into consideration, there were certain places before I met Christ, where I shared something really deep with a friend, thinking that, I need to talk to someone about this. And then 3 or 4 days later, the bride comes out. He's talking to everybody about this thing about me, and it's something I didn't want everyone to know about. Whether it's a good thing or not for everyone to know, that doesn't matter. It was my news to share, and now everybody knows about it. And I told it to him in confidence, so that trust has been broken. And I think that is what is so important, is that when we talk about godly brotherhood, it's that we need to identify those people, but that they are gonna, if they know that they're that person, then it becomes a place where they can be trusted, because they know how important they are to you.
Brings us maybe to another good point. Is does this mean if you have, let's say, 50 friends or brothers, that you can share everything in your life with them? Which is probably no. If there's examples in the Bible where, let's take Jesus. He had circles of friends. His closest friends were the 3 disciples, John, James, and Peter. Then he had the rest of the 12. Then he had 72, and then 120. Which means he didn't share everything with everybody. He had his closest group, which he trusted the most. David was the same. He had the 3 closest mighty men, then the 30, and then the 300. And then probably his army. And I mean, that's just wisdom. Don't share your most intimate things with everybody. Choose the closest guys. Tell them your expectation as your close brothers, and then confide in them. I mean, there's a scripture in Galatians 6, verse 1. It says, "Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." If you want to fulfill the law of Christ, bear each other's burdens. Sometimes things are hard in my life, sometimes it's hard in your life, but when we carry the burdens together, then we're stronger together. It's not 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's a multiplication. 1 plus 1 equals more than 2. That's the potential brotherhood has. And if we can just begin to discover, and set our lives up in a way to live in that kind of community, what God intended for us, we'll be surprised at what influence it can have on our lives. I think the revelation on that can be magnificent.
Yeah, I think we sometimes we default so easily to what we know. And I mean, if you look at sports, both of us played high level sports, and we train certain things so that it becomes muscle memory. And I think we forget about that when we get to certain things in our life, emotionally, we also have a muscle memory. And you're trying to do something different, but because you've got a certain standard, the moment something difficult comes, you default back to that. And I think that's where you need people, where you go. We spoke about it this morning. I told you about how I want to drive. And when I drive with you, I'm gonna be attentive. You're gonna tell me, hey, but what's the speed limit here? And I'm gonna have to go, oh yeah, that this is who I want to be. I shared that with you, and I expect you to keep me accountable with.
It's a really good example. I think to end this off with, they speak about 3 kinds of friends. Friends for a reason, friends for a season, and friends for life. I change it to brothers for a reason, brothers for a season, and brothers for life. And especially when you get married. Newly married does not mean your wife can fulfill a brother's role. She knows almost nothing about masculinity. Okay, some even what they know is from the movies, which is even more dangerous. So it doesn't matter what phase of your life you're in, you need brothers. You need brothers. So maybe you're at a place where you don't trust because you've been hurt, you've been betrayed, disappointed, or even stabbed in the back. It does not mean you don't need brothers anymore. Okay, when we forgive, then we open up that God can come and heal our hearts, and then we have to take the bold step of faith of putting our trust out there again, being a good brother, and testing who can be that back to me again. Because we can say this, it's a fixed thing. We need brothers in our lives. We need it. So even for the listeners out there, you have to know, if you're isolating, if you're walking alone, if you only have female friends, you're in a dangerous place. Somebody has to give you direction. Or, you have to have a place to rub shoulders against, to see different kinds or aspects of masculinity, to set yourself in a good direction of being a man of God. So practically, search your own heart, talk to God about brothers in your life, choose the right ones, and do life together. This is a good, godly, biblical plan. See you guys next time.